In a moment that took the world by surprise, Pastor Bob Joyce, known for his powerful gospel performances, broke down in tears during a live TV interview. As the camera focused on him, the weight of years of speculation and the Elvis Presley rumors seemed to finally take their toll. The audience sat in stunned silence as Pastor Bob wiped away his tears, revealing a side of himself that many had never seen before. While the rumors about Elvis faking his death have swirled for decades, Pastor Bob's emotional outpouring showed there was more to this story, something far deeper than just the whispers of a legend. For years, he has been at the center of this mystery. But what really lies behind the public fascination? In this video, we will dive into the ongoing speculation, exploring not only the striking similarities between Pastor Bob and the King of Rock and Roll, but also the emotional journey he's faced living in the shadow of those rumors. The year 1977 marked the tragic and unexpected death of Elvis Presley. A moment that left the world in shock. For millions of fans, it felt like the end of an era. The King of Rock and Roll had passed, but as quickly as the news spread, another theory began to take root. Almost immediately, rumors began circulating that Elvis had not truly died at all, but had instead faked his death. This idea wasn't just a fleeting thought. It quickly gained traction. People began reporting sightings of a man who bore an uncanny resemblance to Elvis, fueling the conspiracy. These supposed sightings occurred in small towns, at gas stations, and even in local concerts. Many claimed to have seen the king alive and well, living under a new identity, away from the constant media scrutiny and the pressures of fame that had followed him for years. The theory, which suggested that Elvis had staged his death to escape the relentless spotlight, resonated with many fans. Elvis was a man who had spent much of his life in front of cameras, his every move tracked, his relationships scrutinized by tabloids. He had become a symbol of fame's burdens, never able to walk down the street without being mobbed by fans or followed by paparazzi. For those who loved him, the idea that Elvis had faked his death didn't seem all that far-fetched. The thought that he could have simply wanted to live a quiet life out of the public eye felt plausible. After all, his fame had come at a high personal cost. As time passed, the rumors grew more elaborate, but they never truly faded. In fact, the idea of Elvis being alive became a legend in its own right, passed down through generations of fans and fueled by endless media coverage and internet discussions. For some, the notion of Elvis's death being a hoax was not just a theory. It was a comforting thought, a way of keeping the king alive, at least in spirit. Yet, no definitive evidence ever surfaced to prove these theories true. Despite numerous supposed sightings, there was never a solid confirmation that Elvis Presley had faked his death. And while the speculation continued to spread, so did the yearning to believe in it. Fans held on to the idea that perhaps their beloved star had simply disappeared from public view, wanting nothing more than to escape the pressures of fame. It was the perfect theory. It allowed fans to hold on to the idea that Elvis was still with them, even if he wasn't on stage anymore. The mystery surrounding Elvis's death would continue to haunt the media, but it was only the beginning of a much larger narrative. What if Elvis had truly faked his death, only to return in another form? What if the King of Rock and Roll had reinvented himself, emerging from the shadows as someone entirely different, living under a new name, away from the glaring spotlight? These questions would continue to linger for years to come, feeding the conspiracy theories, even as time passed. Yet, as the rumors spread and evolved, the world was still left to wonder. Could Elvis have truly walked away from it all? Was he hiding in plain sight? In the early 1980s, a man named Pastor Bob Joyce began to capture the attention of many, not only for his gospel ministry, but also for the striking resemblance he bore to a man who had passed away years earlier, the king of rock and roll, Elvis Presley. At first, there seemed to be no real connection between the two, but as Pastor Bob's appearances on television and in church services grew, something undeniable began to emerge. From the moment he stepped onto the stage, Pastor Bob's physical features left many wondering if there was more to him than met the eye. His facial structure, high cheekbones, a sharp jawline, and an angular face was an exact match for the iconic features that made Elvis Presley one of the most recognizable figures in history. But it wasn't just his face. Pastor Bob stood tall at 6 feet, just like Elvis had. The more fans watched Pastor Bob, the more they noticed these eerie similarities. It wasn't just a passing resemblance. There was something deeper about the way he carried himself. As time went on, people began to compare Pastor Bob to Elvis in ways that went beyond physical traits. His mannerisms, the way he held himself, his posture, and even the way he moved during his sermons seemed to echo Elvis's unforgettable stage presence. Those who were familiar with Elvis's live performances couldn't help but draw comparisons. It wasn't just about the look. It was about the way Pastor Bob's energy and presence seemed so familiar. The way he gestured with his hands as he spoke, the way he stood with such confidence, it all felt like déjà vu for anyone who had ever seen Elvis perform live. What was even more striking was Pastor Bob's voice. For years, Elvis's deep, soulful voice had captivated audiences, especially when he performed gospel music. Now, when Pastor Bob sang, many fans felt as though they were hearing echoes of Elvis himself. The rich tone, the warmth, and the emotional depth of his singing were nearly indistinguishable from the way Elvis would pour his heart into his performances. Those who grew up listening to Elvis's gospel music often claimed that when Pastor Bob sang, it was like traveling back in time, hearing their beloved Elvis again. At first, some brushed off these coincidences as nothing more than passing similarities. But as fans continued to draw connections, the rumors began to grow. Could it be possible that Elvis Presley had faked his death and reappeared as Pastor Bob Joyce? Was this the same man who had once captivated millions with his music, now standing before them in a different life, under a new name and a new mission? The question seemed too wild to be true, yet the similarities continued to pile up, giving more fuel to the fire of speculation. Fans began to ask, is this just a bizarre coincidence, or is there something more at play? Some even started to believe that Pastor Bob might be Elvis in disguise, living a quiet life as a pastor, away from the fame and pressure that had once consumed him. Was he hiding in plain sight, reinventing himself in a way that no one could have imagined? Pastor Bob, however, never directly addressed these rumors at first. He carried on with his ministry, focused on his gospel work, but the comparisons between him and Elvis only intensified. The more he appeared in public, the more the theories began to take shape. His resemblance to Elvis was uncanny, but could it truly be him? The question lingered in the minds of fans, and with every new appearance, it seemed more plausible that the answer might be hidden in plain sight. As Pastor Bob's reputation grew, so did the mystery surrounding him. With every new sermon, every new song, the comparison to Elvis Presley became harder to ignore. Whether it was his looks, his posture, his voice, or the way he moved, something about Pastor Bob resonated with those who had once adored Elvis. But was this a case of coincidence, or was there something more to the story? The idea that Pastor Bob could be Elvis Presley in disguise began to captivate the imagination of many, with fans all over the world speculating that the king of rock and roll had never really left. Instead, he had transformed himself, taking on a new identity as a man of faith. Whether this was the truth or simply a wild theory, it was clear that Pastor Bob had become more than just a pastor. He had become a living mystery, a symbol of the speculation that still surrounded the idea of Elvis's death, and speaks directly to the listener's heart. Fans who have had the chance to hear Pastor Bob sing gospel music often describe their experience as something deeply moving. They say that when they close their eyes, they can almost swear that they are hearing Elvis himself. The similarity isn't just in the sound, but in the emotional power behind it. For those who grew up listening to Elvis, hearing Pastor Bob sing feels like being transported back in time, to a place where the king of rock and roll's voice still lingers in the air, filling the room with warmth and emotion. The southern drawl that both Elvis and Pastor Bob share is another feature that strengthens the vocal connection between them. It's a soft, slightly melodic twang that is unmistakable, giving their voices a unique and instantly recognizable quality. Elvis's southern accent became part of his signature sound, something that set him apart from other singers of his time. Pastor Bob's voice, too, carries that same southern charm, bringing a sense of authenticity to his performances that resonates with listeners in a way that feels familiar, even if they're hearing him for the first time. It's this shared quality in their voices that has captivated fans and sparked the ongoing comparisons between the two men. Whether he's singing a hymn in church or performing in front of a crowd, Pastor Bob's voice has a way of cutting through the noise, much like Elvis's did during his performances. It's not just about hitting the right notes, it's about conveying emotion, about making the listener feel something deep inside. In interviews, fans often speak about how they can't help but draw parallels between the two voices. Many describe the experience of hearing Pastor Bob sing as both comforting and uncanny. For some, it's a sense of nostalgia, a reminder of the timeless power of Elvis's voice. For others, it's a profound emotional connection, as though they are hearing the same voice that once brought them so much joy. But now, it's coming from a different place, a place of faith and peace. In one interview, a fan who had listened to both Elvis and Pastor Bob for years shared that when Pastor Bob sings, "You feel like Elvis is still here with us. Not in the way we thought, but in his voice. It's like hearing his soul again." This sentiment is echoed by many who have followed Pastor Bob's ministry and are convinced that there's something beyond coincidence at play when they hear his voice. It's not just about resemblance, it's about the emotional experience. For these listeners, Pastor Bob's voice transcends the idea of a mere tribute to Elvis. It feels as though Elvis's spirit is alive and well, reverberating through Pastor Bob's powerful renditions of gospel songs. There's a sincerity in Pastor Bob's delivery that mirrors the genuine emotion Elvis put into his own gospel music. It's as if both men share a deep connection to the music they sing, using their voices to speak directly to their audience's hearts, offering comfort, hope, and a reminder of the spiritual power that music can have. What makes the comparison so compelling is that it's not just about mimicking Elvis's style. It's about sharing the same soulfulness that made Elvis's gospel music so meaningful. Both men pour their hearts into every note, creating a bond with their listeners that goes beyond just enjoying a song. For those who have followed Pastor Bob's performances, hearing his voice is not just a musical experience. It's an emotional journey, one that brings them closer to the music, to the message, and perhaps to a memory of a man who touched millions with his voice. As the rumors about Pastor Bob's connection to Elvis Presley continue to swirl, it's clear that the voice connection remains one of the most powerful and compelling aspects of the mystery. The depth, warmth, and emotional resonance in both their voices leave many listeners convinced that, no matter what the truth may be, the spirit of Elvis Presley still lives on through Pastor Bob's music. Both Elvis Presley and Pastor Bob Joyce share a deep connection to gospel music, a bond that transcends their respective fame and makes their performances resonate on a level far beyond entertainment. For Elvis, gospel music was always the heart and soul of his career. Despite being the king of rock and roll, Elvis often spoke of gospel as the music that truly spoke to him. It was his refuge, a way to find peace amid the chaos of his life in the spotlight. In fact, many of his most heartfelt and emotional performances were rooted in gospel, a genre that allowed him to express his deepest feelings and connect with his audience in a spiritual way. Similarly, Pastor Bob's connection to gospel music is not just a career choice. It's a deeply personal part of his spiritual journey. Much like Elvis, gospel music for Pastor Bob represents more than just a genre. It's a source of comfort, a means of expressing his faith, and a way to touch the hearts of those who listen. When Pastor Bob takes the stage to sing, it's not simply about performing. It's about sharing a piece of himself with his congregation, about conveying the message of love, faith, and hope through the music. His gospel songs are more than melodies and lyrics. They are an extension of his devotion and a reflection of his calling as a minister. For both men, gospel music serves as a form of spiritual expression that transcends the limits of the stage. Elvis's gospel performances were often moments of raw emotion, where he poured his heart into every note, connecting with the audience on a profound level. It was in these moments, more than in any of his rock and roll songs, that the depth of Elvis's soul was revealed. He wasn't just singing to entertain, he was sharing his innermost thoughts and feelings, reaching out to those who needed comfort and solace, using his voice as a conduit for something far greater than himself. Pastor Bob, in much the same way, uses gospel music to connect with his audience on a spiritual level. His music is an expression of his faith, a way for him to communicate the peace and healing he has found through his relationship with God. When Pastor Bob sings, it's not just about hitting the right notes or delivering a flawless performance. It's about allowing the music to carry the message of the gospel. His audience feels this connection, not just through the words, but through the emotional depth and sincerity that Pastor Bob brings to every song. It's this shared emotional connection to gospel music that makes both Elvis and Pastor Bob's performances so powerful. For Elvis, gospel music provided a sanctuary from the demands of fame, a way to find peace and solace in the midst of his public life. For Pastor Bob, it serves as both a spiritual refuge and a tool for ministry, allowing him to share the message of hope with his congregation. In each note they sing, there's a deep sense of personal expression, a reflection of their inner selves and their relationship with something greater than the fame or attention they receive. For Elvis, his gospel music allowed him to reconnect with the spiritual side of his life, something that often got overshadowed by his rock and roll persona. His love for gospel was evident in the way he approached the music, not as a mere form of entertainment, but as an act of devotion. Whether it was in the recording studio or during a live performance, Elvis's gospel songs carried with them an authenticity and vulnerability that was undeniable. It was clear that this was the music he turned to when he needed to feel grounded, when the pressures of being a global icon became too much to bear. Similarly, Pastor Bob's gospel journey isn't just a career, it's a way for him to live out his faith. Every time he sings, he's not simply performing, he's ministering to his congregation, offering them a piece of his soul through the music. Pastor Bob's connection to gospel music is rooted in a deep sense of purpose. It's not about the applause or the recognition. It's about the message he's delivering, the comfort he's providing, and the spiritual connection he's fostering with those who hear his voice. In both cases, gospel music becomes more than just a performance. It becomes an act of service. For Elvis, it was his way of offering a deeper part of himself to the world, a way to connect with his fans on a level that transcended the celebrity persona he had built. For Pastor Bob, it's a form of ministry that allows him to connect with his congregation on a personal spiritual level, bringing the message of the gospel to life through his music. Through their shared love of gospel, both Elvis and Pastor Bob have created something far more meaningful than just songs. They have created moments of connection, moments where the music becomes a bridge between the physical and the spiritual, between the performer and the audience. It's this profound emotional depth that makes their gospel performances so moving, and it's what continues to draw fans to Pastor Bob's ministry. Just as Elvis's gospel music touched the hearts of millions, Pastor Bob's music continues to provide comfort and inspiration to those who hear it, reminding us all of the power of music to heal, uplift, and connect. In a moment that left viewers stunned, Pastor Bob Joyce experienced an emotional breakdown during a live TV interview. It wasn't something he had planned or prepared for, but as the conversation progressed, the weight of years of public speculation and relentless rumors became too much to bear. As he spoke, his voice began to crack, and before long, tears began to stream down his face. The studio fell silent. What was meant to be another routine interview turned into a raw and deeply personal revelation. The emotional toll that Pastor Bob had been carrying for years became painfully clear in that moment. For years, he had been the subject of constant speculation, with people wondering if he was, in fact, the legendary Elvis Presley in disguise. The theories surrounding his identity had been swirling for decades, and while Pastor Bob had remained mostly silent on the matter, the pressure of the rumors had been building. As the years passed, the expectations from the public and the unrelenting desire to uncover the truth took a toll on him. He was no longer just a pastor. He had become a symbol of mystery and intrigue, his true identity clouded by the ongoing debate. In that vulnerable moment on live TV, Pastor Bob's tears were not just a reaction to the rumors. They were a glimpse into the emotional strain he had been under. The constant questioning, the never-ending comparisons to Elvis, the public's need for closure, it had all built up to this point. He was a man who had dedicated his life to his faith, yet he was now forced to live under the shadow of a legend that was not his own. The pressure of living up to the expectations of the public, while also trying to maintain his own identity, was overwhelming. What made this moment so significant was the way it revealed the inner struggle Pastor Bob had been facing. For years, he had been asked about the Elvis rumors, and despite his firm denials, the speculation never stopped. He had tried to focus on his ministry, on his calling, but the constant spotlight, the constant questions, the constant demand for answers, all weighed heavily on him. In that emotional outburst, Pastor Bob was not just responding to the public's obsession with Elvis. He was revealing the pain of being misunderstood and misrepresented. For many, this emotional breakdown was a turning point in the way they viewed Pastor Bob. No longer was he just a figure of mystery or a subject of rumors. He was a human being, a man who had been burdened by the weight of expectations and the unrelenting curiosity of the public. His tears were a moment of raw vulnerability, a reminder that even public figures are not immune to the emotional toll of constant speculation. In that moment, Pastor Bob's humanity shone through. He wasn't just someone people speculated about. He was a man who had been living with the consequences of those speculations for years. The audience's reaction to Pastor Bob's breakdown was one of shock, followed by empathy. For many, seeing Pastor Bob in such a vulnerable state was a powerful reminder that the public scrutiny of celebrities, and especially of figures like Pastor Bob, fueling the cycle of speculation. On the other side, there are those who reject the theory outright. They argue that it's all just a fantasy, driven by the power of social media and the human desire for a connection to something greater than ourselves. These skeptics point to the lack of concrete evidence and argue that the comparisons between Pastor Bob and Elvis are nothing more than coincidences. For them, the idea that Pastor Bob is Elvis is simply an entertaining conspiracy theory with no basis in reality. The tension between these two groups is palpable. Online debates often become heated, with fans of the theory defending their beliefs and skeptics trying to debunk them with logical arguments or discrediting the videos and claims circulating online. The theory has evolved over time, constantly adapting to new information, videos, and observations. As social media has grown, so too has the theory's presence. More and more content creators have jumped on the bandwagon, creating documentaries, fan-made films, and reaction videos that delve into the comparison between Pastor Bob and Elvis. These videos attract viewers from all walks of life, further cementing the theory in the public consciousness. The reach of social media ensures that the debate continues to expand, with new generations of fans and theorists becoming involved in the conversation, keeping the rumors alive. Fans who subscribe to the theory have developed a community around it. Online forums, Facebook groups, and YouTube channels dedicated to the theory have created spaces where like-minded individuals can gather and share their thoughts. These spaces often encourage a sense of camaraderie, as fans bond over their shared belief that they've uncovered a secret that the rest of the world has missed. Some fans even claim to have had personal experiences with Pastor Bob that convince them he is indeed Elvis. They point to moments during his sermons or performances where they feel they've seen a glimpse of the real Elvis behind the pastor's persona. Meanwhile, those who dismiss the theory continue to voice their opinions, sometimes mocking the believers or presenting alternative explanations for the similarities between the two men. These skeptics often argue that the comparisons are just a result of the public's desire for mystery, or they claim that people are simply looking for a way to prolong their attachment to Elvis. They argue that Pastor Bob is a man in his own right, and that the constant comparison to Elvis does a disservice to both men. In the end, the Elvis Pastor Bob theory has become a phenomenon that persists despite the lack of hard evidence. Social media, with its ability to amplify voices and opinions, has ensured that the debate continues, growing with every new video, post, or article. It's clear that the fascination with this theory isn't just about finding the truth. It's about holding on to the legacy of Elvis Presley in a way that feels personal and meaningful. Whether you believe the theory or not, the ongoing discussion surrounding Pastor Bob and Elvis continues to thrive, fueled by the emotional connection that fans have to the legend and the unyielding desire to keep Elvis's spirit alive in the modern world. Throughout Pastor Bob Joyce's journey, one thing has remained clear. His life is defined by his faith and his mission, not by the rumors surrounding his identity. While the Elvis speculation has followed him for years, it has never changed his true purpose. The public's obsession with his resemblance to the king of rock and roll may have captured their attention, but it does not define who Pastor Bob truly is. In his emotional outburst during a live TV interview, Pastor Bob's vulnerability was on full display. It was a powerful reminder of the toll that living in the public eye can take on a person, especially when overshadowed by myths. That moment humanized him in a way that no rumor could, showing the emotional weight he carries. Ultimately, the ongoing Elvis rumors have have distracted from Pastor Bob's real calling as a pastor. It's important that we see him for who he is, a man of faith, dedicated to serving others, rather than being consumed by the speculation that surrounds him.